I'm Mara Webster with In Creative Company, and today I'm so excited to be talking about the fantastic series Black Cake with some of the incredible writers from the series. We are joined by creator and executive producer Marissa Jo Cerar, along with writers Heather Jeng Bladt, Kara Smith, Hayley Tyler, and Yasmin Almanaseer. And I wanted to start with you, Marissa, because it sounds like the moment that you read the manuscript for the book that you had an immediate vision of, this isn't necessarily speaking to me as a feature film, but this is really speaking to me, not even as a limited series, but a series that has the opportunity to really expand the universe of the book. But you also wanted to be very true to the foundation of the material you were adapting. And I was just interested in just some of the gut instincts you had in your initial vision of how you wanted to translate this into a series that explored the book through season one, but created a foundation that you could continue in the future.
Well, part of it was just the depth of the characters and knowing that this was a streaming show. This was not a network series. And also in today's age, like it would require 20 episodes of a broadcast show, which I don't know if that exists. And these shows certainly don't exist on broadcast television. So I knew it would be a small order. I knew it would be probably 7 or 8, I felt like was what was happening at the time. And I just wanted to take the time with the characters. I mean, that was the most important part. I knew there's a character, Mabel, who we meet in episode 5, who is this daughter that Eleanor gave up for adoption. And didn't tell her husband, didn't tell her children until after her death. And I wasn't going to tell her story, all of her story in season 1. It was just not possible in the way that I had structured it. And the book structures it where we're jumping back in time and we're meeting Mabel before she meets her 2 birth half siblings. And I just wanted to wait. I just didn't want to meet her before they met her. Before Eleanor told us it was time to meet her. So I just knew that this was an ongoing series. And to me, season 1 is act 1 of Benny, Byron, Bunny, and Mabel's lives. Season 2 and 3 would be act 2 and act 3. And that's the way I pitched it. And, hopefully we'll get a couple more, at least one more season, to tell these stories.
I love that. And for the rest of you, what's so great about the way that it's been adapted for the screen is, in the book and through the voiceover narration, we're very much learning about the world through Eleanor's eyes, through these notes that she's leaving her children, these voice notes that they're listening to. But then you get to expand upon that world in the scene. So she kind of brings us into the beginning of a scene, and then you get to really look at how to expand that world. Are there other characters that actually maybe she's not talking about directly, but are going to be in this scene? And so I was just interested in that journey and how you would approach scenes in that way, starting with her perspective, but then expanding for whoever wants to jump in first.
We always tried to, stick very close to the book and where we could, but, it's just a different format. It's a different medium. And so there were definitely times where we had to dig deeper, where there were some, big moments in the book that were like a page or a chapter. And, we had to expand on those and really, step those out. And then there was other places in the book where, there was so much detail that, we really weren't able to include there's just characters speak differently in the books. The dialogue is just, can go on. And, you have to make decisions to sort of keep things condensed to the size of a scene. But yeah, we definitely had a lot of those conversations in the room.
I think, and the two examples that I always use, episode 3 and episode 7, each are 3 pages in the book. Eleanor really summarizes these life-altering moments. She was raped. She was in a train crash. She went to a home for unwed mothers and gave up her baby for adoption. Those are the episodes that were most exciting for me, the most difficult. I think 3 was difficult to break in the room. 7 felt like a dream, but maybe it's just because of my own bias. But we had to build these worlds. They were not built for us. And that's before, literally like building stages and going to sets and costumes, but we had to create all of the characters. Who is at the Scottish Trading Company? Who is at the Home for Unwed Mothers? what happened before the assault, what happened after, like really to honor the journey. That's the difference in, a book and a show, is you have to show, what led up, what happened then, and what happened after. So those are two really great examples what people are watching to go back. And if you look at the book and then you look at the show, we're honoring the text always. That was the mandate, but we had to expand and we had to populate these worlds.
And it's such a beautiful exploration in terms of the way that the story, and no matter which characters we're following in scenes, it always comes back to this idea of female relationships, whether they're family members or friendships, and the way that women just constantly lift each other up and support each other, whether it's someone they know super well or someone that they're just interacting with at a certain moment in life. And, again, for whoever wants to jump in and talk about that, I was just interested in how having that center really gave you a guiding force for writing scenes and writing episodes in a show like this, and knowing we always want to bring it back to this particular place. Heather?
That was one of the things that I gravitated to in the book, and that what we got to build so much in the show was that the mother-daughter relationships, and like just having a lot of us have kids now of our own, so just getting to play that out on the screen and to pull from our own experiences was very meaningful, I think, for a lot of us, even relating it to our own mothers, and like just the whole generational thing. And that is what I gravitated to in the book and the whole series, was the generational, like, this comes from your mother and then it gets passed down through you to your kids, and what is our original traumas that we pass down, but then also what makes us us, and what builds, those bonds that make, just a lifelong ancestry.
Was that a similar experience for you, Yasmin?
Yes, I think for me as well. It was so rich and beautiful to be able to explore the relationships between these women, but it was also a beautiful, rich story to show how different all of their experiences are, and kind of show a complicated story of, are we always able to honor how different our experiences are? And, when do we force each other? When do we into a place of shame? When do we police each other? And just to really get a really layered, nuanced look at relationships between women, as you're saying. But, there are so many layers. Sometimes we uplift each other. Sometimes we silence each other. So we just really wanted to be able to explore the full scope of those relationships.
And I think, just jumping off of that, the mothers and daughters are part of it. It's obviously huge. Covey's mother abandoned her, then Eleanor has to give her child to someone else. Her own child abandons her. But Bunny and Covey's relationship, to me, that is one of the things I fell in love with in the book. I hadn't really seen it. You have this young queer girl coming of age in Jamaica circa 1960, and her, straight best friend, and they love each other. Like, to me, they are the soulmates. That relationship is the one I'm really rooting for. I love them so much. And Lachey Anderson, who plays Bunny, is masterful. I can't wait for everybody to see the finale when we really get to see more of Bunny. But that relationship with those two girls, and then Matilda and Pearl and their friendship, which we don't get to see a lot of in season 1, but perhaps there'll be more to tell. But I think it's female friendships that aren't just familial, but that are also platonic, was something that I felt so exciting to me to bring to the screen as well. And for us to all talk, in our all female, writers room, we all have work from very different places, but we all had our own stories, and we brought all of that. And hopefully you'll see the nuances and the specificity in each of these relationships.
I love that. And Kara, I'm going to come to you first for this next question. Because one of the things I love in watching the character of Eleanor in the present space, and then going back to when she was still Covey before she even adopted a new identity out of survival, is just, you watch this young girl with such an idea of the world and so much hopefulness, and then you see the essences of childhood just stripped away. And in every single episode, because we're moving back and forth in time, we get to see those two juxtapositions living side by side. And so what was the experience of getting to write this really rich character and getting to kind of step into those two very different spaces with her?
It was amazing. I think, like, one of the things that came out of working on this show was, like, how to be curious, or being more curious about your family members, especially when it's intergenerational. And I think that, like, where Covey was born is so, so different from where she traveled. And those experiences colored her and who she became later on. And so it was just lovely to kind of create a character that was going from this young girl in a beautiful place. And one of the things we talked about is like growing up on an island like that, you know, Covey around her identity, you know, to leave and then suddenly be thought of as a minority and an immigrant is very jarring. And that completely changes who she is when she gets to England and then also when she is in America. So it creates like this wonderful full circle moment for the character. But I do think it also touches on a lot of realities for our audience. Well, I hoped it certainly touched me. And yeah, it was awesome.
And for you, Marissa, to that vein, kind of what was important to you to really bring to those two different sides of the character that you felt were important to capture when she's still got her innocence and then when she's very much thrust into adulthood very quickly?
Well, I wanted to not even just in terms of the writing and the performance, but in production and the production design and in the way that Jamaica is portrayed was very, very important to me, that it was aspirational, that these flashbacks to her life before were joyous, beautiful. I mean, you look at it, it's stunning. Like you want to be her clothes. I said to Hayley, our costume designer, I said, Bunny and Covey, like I want them to be cool. Like I want us to watch them and be like, okay, I wish I could go buy that vintage, like, macrame, tank crop, which they look gorgeous. And I want it to be true. She's middle class. Her dad has a store. At a time he was successful, and there are different, neighborhoods, and there is poverty, but we're so used to seeing this idea of island life, at least me and what I've been exposed to. It's either like white tourists visiting this location and something happens and the people who actually live there are the supporting characters in the story, or it's just a beautiful backdrop, or it's a crime drama and it's dark. It's very dark. There is no beautiful, breadfruit trees and, like we're not in the sea. So I wanted to make sure that her memories are positive. Her life wasn't easy, but she yearns for home. And so I want it visually, the colors, all of it, the whole crew and the whole team, like that was our discussion at the very beginning. So I hope that came across. I think that it did, just to see, and you can see the colors of Scotland and England and the costumes and the cinematography and the production design are different. They're muted because she is, not as bright as she was when she was this girl who really was so unique, and that she had a voice in a time when young girls weren't really heard and where she lived and at the time. And all of a sudden her voice, she's getting smaller and her world's getting smaller and her voice is being silenced. And, ultimately she finds it again, but it takes her, a dash across the world for her life to get there.
Yeah, I mean, and for all of you off the back of that, in terms of the locations are so rich because the show was actually filming in Jamaica and Wales and Scotland and London and America and literally all over the world internationally. And it's, I think it just brings a lot when you have these scenes in Jamaica and it's the local community or the background artists in the scenes, and it gives a lot of richness in each of the locations to really have such an identity in the show. And so how did that help shape the way that you were all writing the series, kind of knowing that you were going to be able to have the show on location and to really expand the universe and not be constricted in trying to recreate it or having to film everything inside studio locations? How did that shape some of the writing process for all of you?
Well, for me, certainly it was making sure that it really felt authentic, that we were like, one thing I love about the show is the specificity of the characters' experiences, but also like we really do celebrate the times that we're in. So when we're in Jamaica, like 1950s Jamaica, we wanted to make sure that was real, that we were giving it to what MJ was saying, that we were telling the truth, what it was like and what the joys of those times felt like, what they looked like, what they smelled like. We talked a lot about like even how Covey would have felt leaving Jamaica and landing in like freezing cold England, and exactly what that feels like, and how sometimes it feels like you can never get warm, and then what it's like to surf as an older woman, and I don't know, for me, it was about making sure that we had a real understanding of the time and infusing the story with it.
There was so much specificity and detail in the book, and it was great to be able to, always go back to the book and immerse ourselves in that world. And then beyond that, we also did lots of research to, really make sure that we were, getting things right and making it feel authentic and grounded and as real as possible.
And we have Kara, who, helped so much. She was just like an encyclopedia, a history buff, but also, where she is from, which if you want to talk a little bit, Kara, about whatever you feel comfortable sharing, but she just helped us bring so much specificity and authenticity as well, to the whole series, but specifically to the Jamaica part of it.
Oh, thanks, MJ. But I'm from Bermuda. I grew up in a very, very small island. It's part of one of the reasons why I connected to Covey of like, Covey is a young girl that has dreams and she has these big ideas for her life. And I really resonated with that. And so, I was so excited and enthusiastic to have a show that's going to show like island life for reals. So I wanted to make sure that like everyone just knew what it was really like, but also there's such a rich history of the Caribbean nations in England. And I also wanted to make sure that we understood that, because it's such a big part of UK life and culture presently, and the time that Covey would have been traveling is really a pivotal time in British history. So yeah, I love that stuff. It's part of my history, so I was very enthusiastic about it.
And Kara was great because her dad still lives there, so he would send us videos, and then Kara would send us the videos of him and his like lush backyard, and we would actually get to be on the island and see like what foliage is growing there, what fruits are growing there. The really cool thing was that her dad sent like this loquat tree, which has always been in my grandmother's backyard. And so I just thought, I was like, it's in California, but like nobody really knew when I was growing up what a loquat tree was, and I would always bring them to school. And then here it was in Bermuda, and then we both looked up like where loquats come from, like the show, like Mabel does.
Yeah,
and it comes from China.
Yeah, it's a Chinese fruit.
It's a Chinese fruit that got to the islands, who then like got brought to California, all over the world. But it was very interesting to find.
Yeah.
I love that. And Yasmin, I'm going to come to you first for the next question, because there was something that Marissa was saying in terms of, her life back home wasn't easy, but it still had a lot of joy to it. And it made me think of her relationship with her father, where it's a very difficult relationship that they have. There's a lot of hurt in that and a lot of imperfections. And, he's the reason that she ends up in the position of being put in this marriage with a much older man against her will. And at the same time, there is love between them. It's a very specific love. And so I was just interested in the experience of writing a relationship and capturing so many different complexities in the way that you're able to in the show.
Yes, I mean, it's such a beautiful relationship. A father-daughter relationship is something that, we really wanted to make sure that we were doing justice, especially like when your father is a different race than your mother, is such an interesting dynamic, and our international relationships are so interesting. And I think what we really wanted to accomplish was like finding a way to show complexity in these characters, and that there isn't really a bad guy. Like, I think one of the things that makes me most excited about what we do as storytellers is showing someone and their decision making and thinking, what is wrong with this person? Why would they do this? And then making you privy to the right moment to really understand this person's perspective and to understand that they are doing the best they can. They're making decisions about survival. That is so much the spirit of the show, is decisions made for survival. So we really wanted to show that in their relationship, that there is so much regret sometimes in hindsight about decisions made for survival, but oftentimes our choices are very limited. And we do things so often trying to protect the people we love, and we end up causing harm. And that is a very specific dynamic too, with so many parents and so many children. Like, so many children have that experience of feeling harmed by their parents' decisions that were made really for their protection originally. So it's just such a complicated story, but it really is so universal. I mean, I think it's what we were trying to do with the whole show, is just to show that all of these experiences rhyme with each other. And like, you know, a story about a queer person really does echo in the life of our other characters who are not queer, and how it's all related. And, you know, I think that's something that we tried to show in that relationship between Covey and her father, is that so often we make decisions that we really do feel are in the best interest of people we love, and we end up causing harm on accident.
And that's such a great point in terms of the way that the show just kind of gives you these different perspectives through different characters, through scenes as well. And Heather, I'll start with you for this next one, because like, I love the way that there's scenes that we kind of get to revisit at different moments and see from different characters' perspectives. You know, one example of that is the fact that with Benny, she wasn't present for her father's funeral. And so the family thought, you know, she didn't want to show up. It wasn't important to her. And then we learned there was a huge reason why she wasn't there. And she actually drove up, but she just couldn't come inside. And so how did you go about getting to work on a show where you get this opportunity to not just look at a scene once, but to really richly develop it from different perspectives and to constantly revisit some of the same moments throughout the show?
I think that was part of the magic of the book, was that you did get to explore, and it was parsed out throughout the book. And then MJ really wanted to get the perspectives of everyone. And that's the great thing, is that you're not just looking at it in one way. You're not just looking at it from Covey's point of view. You're looking at it from the past, the future, the present, and then getting to go off with each of these characters, and how each one of these characters, like how a decision made by Bert was made, you know, has affected everybody. But then when you turn around, you get to see how Benny, why from her point of view as well. And, you know, that's something that's very unique to the series, because you don't always get to see that and get everyone's like story, and get to love everyone, like, you know, get to love everybody's point of view, and see that we are all flawed, but we all affect each other. And that's why there is the disconnect, and why, you know, ultimately we do need to like talk to each other, because we're all going off. We are our own main characters of our lives, but everybody else is our side characters. And if we just turn around and put ourselves in their shoes, we could probably work things out with them.
I think that's one of the great themes of the show is secrets, keeping the secrets that we keep from the people that we love. And what drives us to do that, you know, is so often shame, the shame that surrounds it. And, you know, Benny is keeping secrets from her family. Eleanor is keeping huge secrets from her children. And, you know, in many cases, the secrets that we keep from our loved ones, you know, maybe we might think they're a bigger deal than they actually end up being to the people. Like, but it causes so much heartache and so much strife to hold on to that secret and to keep it. And it was just really great to be able to explore that from so many different characters' perspectives.
Absolutely. And Marissa, what were some of the challenges that came in just navigating and kind of like tracking all of that? Okay, so we've looked at this scene from this perspective. If we're going to step back into that moment, what's the purpose? What's the shift in perspective or the additional detail that I want to give the audience in this moment?
I think because I knew when I pitched it, exactly how it would be structured. And because I just am so really, really prepared, because I don't like being asked questions and I don't have the answers to at these huge meetings with all these people staring at me. So I had a very detailed map when I pitched this show, and I knew which episode that we would look at Lynn's point of view of the wedding, and then we would jump back in time and see who Lynn was. I didn't want to tell the audience in episode 1 that Lynn had more to him. I didn't want them to all of a sudden empathize and root with him. I just wanted to tell, we meet someone, we get a first impression of them. And then if we talk to them and ask them some questions, we might learn a little bit more about them. And so that's what would happen when it was the right moment, when Lynn would tell us, when Lynn was thinking about his life, when he was looking back and saying, what did I do? Where did I go wrong? How did I get here? That's when we flash back, not just arbitrarily to put exposition in the first episode of a television series. So it was all character. And so just for me, it was understanding all of that when I pitched it. And then when I have a writer's room, then we come in, we have so much to work from, but it's really just digging through and excavating and adding all of those details and talking and everybody putting parts of themselves in it. And so it really, I hope I'm probably like jumping. I can't remember what you asked me. Oh, points of view is changing percent. And also genre. The book is, it's a family drama wrapped in a mystery. It's much more family drama. It's very quiet, as is the show. But I pitched it. I wanted to make sure it was very clear. This is a murder mystery. We won't forget that. And part of that, the genre of it all, was changing perspectives on the wedding night in order to eliminate suspects of who killed Little Man in a way that is not like a procedural, that is not like fill in the blank, television show. So just, I think so much planning made it successful. I think it's successful in what our intentions were. But it was really about character and going into their world when the story told us it was time to get to know them a little bit more and to dig a little deeper. I think if that makes sense.
Yeah, absolutely. And Hayley, I think you were writing on episode 7, right? Mm-hmm. Which is such a pivotal moment in terms of some of the backstory that we get with her. And I wanted to ask in particular about just writing the scenes where we see her giving birth to her daughter and just really having her autonomy and her choices and her wants and needs stripped away so heavily, both in the scene where she's giving birth and she's even trying to say what she needs, she's like, I want to see. And they're like, no, it's best if you don't. This is just how we do it. And then the scenes that follow in the relationship that she starts to want to build with her daughter, but isn't being allowed to have.
Yeah, that was like just such a dream to write that episode with MJ. So many powerful scenes in that episode. We really did a lot of research about those homes that women were sent to at that time. That detail that you mentioned about, wanting to see was a real detail that we had found in our research, that that young women would often be told, like, they would stack pillows on their stomachs so that they couldn't see what was happening. And they were just kept in the dark about everything. And many of the young women were so young that they didn't really understand what was happening to their bodies and what was going to happen during labor. And they were just completely uneducated and not allowed to be involved in any of it. And it was just heartbreaking. And so we wanted to capture the reality of what those places were like and what it really would have been like for Covey to go through that and to have her autonomy completely stripped away. To go through, what is for most people one of the most, life-changing moments that you'll ever go through, becoming a mother. To not be able to own that process and to make it her own, to just have it completely stripped away. It was really important for us to go really deep on that and to really get inside her head and understand just how heartbreaking and shattering that would be for her.
Yeah. And in talking a little bit about where the season ends up at the end of episode 8, this will be going out once that's aired next week. I wanted to ask just about really figuring out what is the place that we want to leave these characters in, because it's not like listening to these tapes of Eleanor suddenly solves all the problems that her kids have. And they're at a point where they have now met a whole other sibling that's part of the family now. And they're all really at the beginning of a new chapter of just, opening themselves up, being more vulnerable, finding a little bit more self-freedom in truth and honesty and less secrecy. And so how did you all have conversations and discussions to really figure out what's the end goal for this character that really leaves them on a path for hopefully season 2 and beyond, where we can continue to carry that?
Well, I would say for me, one of the, sorry, MJ, one of the other cool relationships that I really loved was getting to see Byron and Benny become brother and sister again. And Benny, we do find out what's been going on in her life, and it's really, it's a lot. And it's a wonderful opportunity for Byron to show up for her in a way that can rebuild their family, because now they are orphans in the world. They've lost both their parents, and for a while they lost their family, and so it was wonderful to kind of create this opportunity for them to come back together again, which I really loved. And so I think we had a lot of conversations about where they would end up, for sure, because they were so far apart in the beginning.
Yeah, I think, I mean, there's so many conversations and so many opinions and voices, and some people wanting to throw, not these people on this call, wanting to throw everything, and I'm like, no, stop, we can't tell I mean, this is not the end of the series. It's not a series finale, hopefully. For me, I wanted to open doors, close some doors, open doors. And like I said in the beginning, it's chapter 1, Byron and Benny. They're now back in each other's lives. What does that look like? Byron has just been told that his partner who broke up with him is pregnant, and that she isn't sure what she wants to do. What is he going to do? He sits down and is doing a deposition with Mr. Mitch for a discrimination lawsuit. What happens there? We see Steve watching this video of Byron. It's his confrontation with Byron. What is he going to do with it? Benny mentions her grandmother Matilda very subtly, quietly. Eleanor also mentions her. What does that mean? Does that mean we might find out what happened to Matilda? Mabel has not been able to process anything that happened, or people understand the timeline, like 9 days. This is very brief. A lot happens because we're spanning 50 years in the past and 9 days in the present. So she now is forced to return to her real life, her son and her parents. What is she going to do? Is she going to go try and find out who her birth family was? Is she going to confront her parents and say, I've heard this tumultuous story about my adoption. What did you think was happening in that moment? So there's just so much story left to tell. And so it's really leaving these characters like, oh, what's next? Now that this part of it is over, listening to my mother's recordings is over. But what do I do with all of that information? With the truth? What do I do with the truth? That's where I hope everybody sees that we left these characters. And Bunny, Bunny/Etta, what is she gonna, now that she's confessed to killing Little Man? What's next for her, and I really want to explore. I want a Bunny, spin-off show. I love her so much. I just want to tell her story too. So it's just, what's next? What do I do with the truth now that it's all out there for each of these characters?
Well, it's such a beautifully written series. You've all done such a phenomenal job along with the rest of the team working on this show. So congratulations on an amazing season. And thank you so much for sharing all of this. I really appreciate your time today.
Thank you.
Thank you.